here. We also have Paul Hagen, who's the Chief Information Officer at Johnson County, and Chris Kelly, the IT Director at the City of Olathe. Hi guys, thanks for coming this evening. But we also had Mel Bunting from the City of Shawnee and Vicki Irie of the City of Overland Park, as well as our own staff members that helped with this. So, would this be for Greg? Is this?
Yes, it is. Great.
We're going to welcome Greg to the podium for presentation for the first time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, members of council. I'm here to present a plan that I had almost no time with. I feel like I'm cheating here. I feel like I'm walking to the front of the line at the amusement park, getting to jump onto the fun part of the ride. The City of Gardner has had done a data center and a network assessment back in the beginning of early 2013. You guys all know this. There were significant deficiencies noted, and it recommended a number of corrective actions. It was a thick document. It was conducted by Alexander Open Systems, and as I understand it, there was an attempt at an RFP earlier on, and it was something that needs to be reassessed. So, again, coming in at the very end of this process, the RFP's been done. It was developed with the assistance of the Johnson County CIO, Paul, over there. Thank you very much, Paul. It's based on those recommendations in the RFP, and it was distributed to 19 local vendors, and it's posted on the city website. The vendors that were planning to bid on this were required to attend a pre-bid conference. The pre-bid conference was to cover any of their questions that they might have had, and to make sure that they understood what was required of them in order to provide a bid for this project. Representatives from 7 different vendors did attend the pre-bid conference. We've received 3 qualified proposals, and by qualified it means it's from a company that could place the bid that could make the job happen. Alexander Open Systems, IT Pathways, and Technology Group Solutions, LLC. This is where I actually come into this now. And one of the first things that happened after I started here, there was a review committee by the area CIOs, which the mayor pointed out who those people were earlier today. And I was thankful to have that group there to look over these proposals. I'm not from this area originally. I don't know the companies like they do, and it was very comforting to have that group there to provide that input and to make a recommendation. The group recommended that we go with Alexander Open Systems based on their price for the project and based on their significant experience in the projects of this type. All of the vendors, all of the CIOs for the area had experience with Alexander Open Systems and had great things to say about their work and the quality of the products that they provide. In the quote that I received, and that was actually a separate quote from the other documents, it was broken down into equipment at $203,738, professional services at $69,105. And this is where I've asked them to add into their quote, when they were working on it, I asked them to add a $20,000 line for contingency. So their original actual bid was around $270,000. The $20,000, I'm coming into this brand new. I don't know what's needed for part of the RFP we might come up with that we might be able to make some real differences in. And I don't want to have to commit the normal budget in order to complete this. So as part of this, this will give us an extra $20,000 of possible and contingency money that won't have to come out of normal budget at that time. And then there was financing origination and just the other small parts of it. Totally comes to just under $295,000. And that's why I put that amount on the council action request. So total amount financed could potentially be as much as $294,044.84 over the course of 3 years. It makes a yearly payment of $98,014.95. At the end of the 3 years, we expect to take over all of the costs. There are no additional costs during this that we know of at this time, but at the end of the 3 years, we will take over the cost of maintenance on the equipment and on software, and that totals just a little over $17,000 a year at current prices. Now, those are always subject to some change. They tend to go up over the course of time. So questions about any of this that's been presented, I'll try to answer. If not, I've got gentlemen from AOS here. These are the technical experts. They help put this thing together. Mark Ortiz and Mark Smalley. Thank you.
Well, real quick, and I know this is the first time that you've presented.
Yes, sir.
After presentation, we open the floor for public comments
Okay.
on the new business items. I'll tell you the same that I tell the other directors, don't wander far, because once
stay
we're
right
done
over
with
here.
them, we'll probably have you back to answer a few questions, so.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in attendance that would like to make public comment regarding new business item number 1?
Good evening, Council and Mr. Mayor. My name is Rich Bell, and I live 521 East Hawthorne. I was wondering if there's a copy of what we're getting for all this somewhere on the city's website. I can look at it.
It's part of the agenda for this tonight's meeting, posted on the city website.
All right, I'll look at it. Thank you.
Anyone else? With no one else coming forward, questions for?
One more thing real quick. I forgot to note that as part of their environment refresh document, they mentioned that the city would need to keep this information confidential. That's not going to be in the agreement that we signed. We've already talked to them. They understand that this is a city government. There's nothing that we can keep confidential in this. I just forgot to add that as part of my presentation. So, questions, if you have any at this time? Yes, sir.
Okay.
Greg, as we look at it, and I know, though you did come in at the end, I'm sure you've had the opportunity to review everything that's part of it. When you look at an investment this size, and I know the investment as large as it is because we allowed ourselves to fall so far behind.
Yes, sir.
When you look at almost $300,000 in the life cycle of an installation like this, what should we expect from before you look at having to do, or with a program like this, do we prevent at any point having to look at another $300,000 installation with regular maintenance like you talked about? I mean, this is technology, so it's always going to be changing and evolving, but by something of this nature, does it put us in a better position to prevent this kind of expenditure down the road?
There's always going to be a need to refresh, and putting in all of the equipment at one time means you're going to have a life cycle change that's going to come at a similar time later on. Now, we can do some things, do some changes early on, start replacing things before, kind of like the pavement presentation the other day. If we start doing things early on and we start upgrading equipment, a lot of this equipment, especially the storage, is heavily upgradable, highly upgradable, and as we need more capacity for storage, we can add it there, and that will probably be one of the earliest things to come to us. And future things that are going to need to be replaced are going to be servers. Servers, they don't get slower, but it feels slower over the course of time. So those will be something that we'll probably have to replace on a cycle basis. As far as network equipment, you always think that, oh my gosh, what are we ever going to do with 10 gigabit Ethernet between, here in the police station, and even gigabit Ethernet between the other locations. And right now, that's plenty for what we need. But at some point in the future, we will be required to replace those. Those types of pieces of equipment do have a fairly long life cycle. They tend to last a long, long time. As long as you're happy with their performance, they don't just stop working normally. But at some point in the future, we're likely to run into a case where we may want 10 gig Ethernet to the water plant, or right now we don't have anything to water plant, but we may want a faster Ethernet connection between here and the electric company or something like that.
Okay.
So.
The only other question I had, I'll turn it over to Steve, because I'm sure he's dying to dig into this side of it. We walked into his office, so to speak. Lori, could you just speak from the budget perspective, because that wasn't in the action form of what's set for 2015 and moving forward on that?
When we originally had you approve this, it was for $105,000 a year over 3 years.
Okay.
And we didn't do that first year, so it just kind of shifts.
Right.
And the other thing on this is an internal service fund, so it's charged back exactly to all the cost centers that use it.
Okay.
So it's basically being funded across the city, all the way from utilities to.
And completely built into this 15 budget.
It's completely built into the 15 and 16, and it'll just shift, right, it'll shift to 17.
Great. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
Well, thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
You are a breath of fresh air. I appreciate your coming in and helping from an internal perspective. Again, this comes back to staff augmentation and being able to leverage existing institutional resources and brain power. That's very important. I'm glad you're on. to help to shepherd this. And it's not just me who has some IT experience. I mean, Christine over here has worked for IT service company in the past. She's not gonna tell you. So I think we all understand the importance of IT infrastructure, especially when you're carrying your own data, especially billing information, stuff like that. So this is going to be a much needed revamp. I had a little bit of a question about the funding on this, and you already asked that question, Heath. I'm looking at some of the components. Again, the VNX arrays are very good arrays. I'm not going to get deep into the jargon aspect of this, but typically life cycle on a lot of those larger components is 5 to 10 years, depending on how you keep it up. Cisco is a proven technology. The EMC VNX is a proven technology. Workstation, again, workstation and server replacement, that'll have to be some sort of a maintenance plan built for that, just
Correct,
like we do
yes.
with PMS, with the payment management system, with the public works folks. Again, it's another piece of investment that we have to do. We understand that. And we also understand this is not going to pay for itself. Again, it's one of those cost center things, and working in IT, you understand it's a cost of doing business.
Right.
I did have a couple of questions about the actual bid itself. Now, understanding that we relied on the AOS folks to do the initial sizing and estimation on what our needs were, and obviously AOS is getting the bid. So my question is, and I haven't had a chance to go and do any kind of independent pricing. Are we confident on the face that we are looking at from the equipment perspective our best options in terms of pricing?
I think that actually that question is better answered. The Johnson County CIO, Paul, actually went through all of this himself. The committee here did most of the RFP work. This isn't an RFP that was developed by AOS or anything like that. They built this RFP, and they built the equipment list, and they sent it out like that. It's not, this isn't an AOS, bid that was, they didn't develop the specs and provide the bid for it as, that kind of thing can't happen, but this is not what happened here, not at all.
Yeah, that was my only concern about this, was that this seemed to be the one that bid as well.
Right, not at all.
All to pull together the specs, so.
No, specs,
Paul did this with the help of Mary and the group here,
and a lot of talk and a lot of work, so, yeah, that was, like I said, I get to come in on the fun part. That's the hard part of these
I
things.
know. Yeah, and I mean, you're not gonna find a bigger advocate for this work than me, but I just wanna make sure from a fiscal stewardship perspective that we know that we are, from a cost arena, that we're making the best possible investment, for the next 5 to 10 years for the citizens.
I think that with the input from the area IT people that we got, I think we couldn't have any question about whether that's the case or not. These people know a lot about what they're doing, and they chose this as the best and most competitive bid.
And from the standpoint of, again, hardware, it's solid. I know these technologies, I use them every day. So from that perspective, I'll vouch for them. They're good. It's a good platform, good topology. So
Good.
thank you.
I just wanted to give a really heartfelt thank you to Paul and Mel and Chris and Vicki, as well as the staff. I mean, that was very much appreciated. And you talked about consultants, and I mean, that was, yeah. So thank you very much for that.
Christie, anything?
Yeah, I just have one more clarification, because I appreciate your response to my question earlier. There are certain things that we're responsible for,
Yes.
as part of this, and I just want to be clear, the 20,000 contingency that you built in is to cover those things, or to cover any overrun with AOS specific items?
It would be to cover any overrun with AOS specific items. The things that we're responsible for don't have, it's not adding something new to get that. We've
Okay,
got
we've
IP
got it already
addresses,
placed.
we
That
have
was
power,
gonna be
we
my
have
question.
rack space, we
So-
have all of these things. Those are just things that they will require in order to complete their portion of the
that was
bid.
my
We already
question.
have them.
Okay, got it, great, thank you.
And there'll be some technology changes too.
Absolutely.
Some leeway there.
Right, yeah, I anticipate that it won't, I anticipate that when we're going through this, I'm gonna see something that I'm gonna say, oh, we really need to do this too. And that's why I asked for the
Okay,
contingent
great.
portion of that.
Thank you.
Put it on the punch list, so to say.
One other, maybe I missed it on there, as far as support after the install and the
Mhm.
initial setup, are we contracted for support as well, or?
Well, with any luck, I'm gonna be able to take care of that for you, that's
Okay,
what I'm here
okay,
for,
okay.
yeah. I'm not worried about this is not a project that I couldn't do. I've done projects of this type before, I've managed, virtualized systems with large data, with SANs and with large networks, and I'm not at all worried about taking care of this after it's installed.
I did have one last question for Greg, and it had to do with the secondary side. I know that up until now, we haven't really had a good DR,
Right.
a solid DR. Do we have that site identified, or is it?
We're planning on the police station right now. We haven't necessarily identified exactly which room inside the police station that we're going to go for. It's got a good basement, and it's got good power, and it's a logical place to put the disaster recovery location.
Okay, well, that's fine. I didn't want you to have to disclose that if you didn't feel like it.
I don't think that's a bad thing to disclose. It's not against, having something like that in the middle of a police station, I'm not sure we could have found a more safer place to put it.
That's true, that's true. I just said it wasn't listed on the.
Right, yeah.
on the RFP.
It wasn't identified as part of the RFP, but it has been since then.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions for Greg? If not, I entertain a motion on new business item number 1.
So moved.
Second. Motion, Shute, second Freeman, that we authorize the city administrator to negotiate and execute an agreement for IT infrastructure services with Alexander Open Systems, AOS, for a total amount not to exceed $295,000 to be paid over a 3-year period. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Thank you.
Carry on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
Thanks, Greg.
New business item number 2. Consider a consulting services contract with Gould Evans Associates to complete a land development code rewrite. Brian, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor and Council. The city's current zoning ordinance was adopted in 1992 and the subdivision regulations in 2007. As part of the implementation of the Governor's new comprehensive plan, the zoning and subdivision regulations need to be updated to align with the current vision of the community. The 2015 budget does contain $80,000 for the consulting services for the rewrite. The city did receive proposals from 8 qualified firms around the Midwest and selected 3 firms for interviews. Gould Evans Associates was selected based on the criteria as defined in the RFP, as they stood out for their experience with a variety of communities, their staff experience and knowledge, the quality of their work, and their approach to regulation. The financial impact of the project as recommended was $77,800. As I mentioned, the 2015 budget did include $80,000. The project is being funded out of the Business and Economic Development Department's budget. In the packet this evening, you received a copy of the contract along with the scope of services for the work. And one thing we did say, $77,800. We are asking tonight that the city administrator execute a contract for consulting services with Gould Evans in the amount of $77,800 to complete the land development code rewrite and to authorize the city administrator to approve modifications to the scope of services up to the budget amount of $80,000. Just to give us, as with Greg, as we're going through this, we might find a few things here that we'd like to tweak a bit in this code.
All right. Is there anyone in attendance that would like to make public comment regarding new business item number 2?
We do have Chris also here this evening from Gould Evans.
Very good.
My name is Adam Cox, 285 East Skylark Street. I reviewed the data on this and was kind of looking through it, and I understand it's kind of a draft timeline of how things would transpire, but one thing I noticed is there wasn't a lot of detail about how the public could get involved in the development or the vision of the code. There was a few references, but it wasn't very specific. And then near the end of the process, there was a public open house about the proposed changes. And then 3 weeks later, it said that it would be on the council's agenda to pass it, right? So 3 weeks, not a lot of time, especially with a lot of the technical matters, et cetera, involved in this. Just the way the plan was laid out, I didn't think that there was a lot of, opportunity for people to, be a part of this, which is really the legal code that's gonna drive the development of our community. So, wanted to point that out, and mention it, and, back to some of the things that were mentioned in the work session, just this particular item, I kinda don't always make all these meetings, but I try and read the agendas and the minutes and whatnot, and I don't really recall seeing things like indicating that this was being planned or coming down the pipe or something, and it's entirely possible I just missed it or something, but it just all of a sudden, there's this thing here that, here's this expenditure to do this rewrite. So that's just a general commentary about, when you're trying to follow what's coming and what's happening, and if it was, definitely discussed in advance or whatever, then it's my error, along that way. But those types of communication things just help us feel like we can see what's happening more. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Al.
Thanks, Al.
And I think his point's well taken, but as it turns out, this was something that was a priority established probably about April last year, as part of the budget process. It was approved for the 2015 budget in August. So it's been in the pipeline for a while, but that's, sometimes government moves slow. When the state says you have to approve the budget in August, but it's for the following year, that's why you see something like this in February and think, where did it come from? Brian, would you like to weigh in on Mr. Cox's question? And if what I said was you running my mouth enough, then we can just move on to questions from council.
In the scope of services, they do define a public engagement strategy. There will be an advisory commission right off the bat, technical committee, focus groups. Again, this is a draft scope of services. If the contract's approved, we'll delve into that quite a bit more. We had a tremendous amount of public input as far as the comp plan, which is kind of leading this forward. But definitely public involvement. And I'll work with the consultant on the inside of that, where we talk about public input at the very end, and then 3 weeks later bringing it forward. We do want to make sure there's ample time to incorporate any changes that are needed. And like I said, Chris Bruce from Gold Evidence Agency, if you have any questions.
Other questions?
Actually, if Chris doesn't mind, I wouldn't mind hearing from Chris on the way citizens have been involved in other initiatives like this.
Thank you. Chris Brewster, Gould Evans. We very much appreciate that concern, and we're sensitive to it. We do think code projects are different than plans, and that you just, as Brian mentioned, you put a lot of effort into the plan. So we want to value that public input very much and take our lead from there. That being said, we do think the public engagement strategy that we'll sit down and craft as the very first part is going to be critical to laying out benchmarks for this project. The things that were mentioned that are in the scope, there is a kickoff meeting where we want to conduct that's open to the public, where we take our analysis of your code, matching it with your comprehensive plan and your economic development strategy, as well as matching it with the analysis that was done of your code in August, and take a deeper dive into what we think the issues are. And we open that to the public in a more of an open house forum to understand, are we on base with where problems with the code might be. That's before we've even started drafting any potential solutions. The other part of the engagement strategy that we have at least framed out, not defined, is the idea of these issue papers, where we will take the top 5 to 8 critical issues that we see of your plan and develop more of a public information piece around those that explain, here's what your plan said, here's what your current code says, here's why we see that's a problem, and here's a range of options. And then we'll use those papers to have further discussions with either focus groups or the general public And again, that's going on as we're drafting the code. And then the open house that was mentioned at the end is kind of to reveal the results of that before we even get into any kind of adoption hearing. So the point on there being 3 weeks is well taken as well. Hopefully we've done enough of our due diligence and engagement that we don't have any major problems and there's no surprises, but it is possible, and that time frame might be a little tight. And that's something, as Brian mentioned, when we sit down to lay out that engagement strategy, we'll really take a close look at that and make sure we've got it laid out appropriately.
Other questions?
Yeah, I just had some questions, and I don't know who this is gonna go for, but when you talk about the public engagement strategy, there's 4 different kind of committees that are established. And it seems like, in reading through this, and I could be wrong, that most of these committees, are standalone versus any intermingling. So I'm wondering if there's a chance for that. And the reason I say that is because one of the things that I did was on the design standards when that was rewritten a couple of years ago. I think it was eye-opening to hear from people who had different interests. You know, you have your developers who really don't live here, but they're investing money here, and then you have kind of residents who live here and expect a certain thing. So I would just caution to be able to get as much intermingling instead of what I'm reading this to be kind of very fine-tuned purposes of each of the teams.
Yeah, no, those are good concerns too. The way, what we've discussed with staff, at least at this point, we've had the most success on projects, particularly following a plan, when we deal first with a technical committee. That's the first committee you mentioned. That's sort of the working group that's going to pore over code sections, and we don't want to bog the general public or other broader groups down with that type of work. So we try to keep that committee small, and then they take their marching orders from the advisory committee. That's where we would expect the broadest input, that cross-section that you're mentioning. And so we would like to get, you know, again, in the public engagement strategy, we'll set that up and start figuring out who, when, and how. But we do like to get members from all of the standing boards that have something to do with the development code, as well as outside interests on that committee. Knowing that we can't get everyone, that's another reason for those focus groups and issue papers we talked about, because then that is another forum for that technical committee to hear that cross-section that you're mentioning. But we very much want to hear all of that.
Okay, all right, great, thank you.
Chris, don't go too far. I had a couple of quick questions, and they're really revolving around the timeline, because as you said, there are critical issues that we know are going to need to be addressed, low-hanging fruit, if you will, some things that aren't even written in our existing code that need to be addressed, such as mixed-use designations and things like that. It says here that there's critical issues drafts that are going to be taking place between March and April of this year. Are those actionable items that we can, pass ordinances to incorporate into our existing codes, or is this something that, my concern here is that we don't want to wait a year to address these issues that are pressing issues, that are serious, egregious problems with our existing code, or haven't even been considered in our existing code.
Yeah, that's a little bit tough to answer, but I would say from past experience, yes, it's possible there will be things that jump up where, yeah, we can, and in fact, I think you've already started working on some of those from that the August report. So we would kind of take our marching orders from that report and start to filter things out. I do think the one caution to be, this project, the last time you did this was 1992. This project is a chance to get that broad perspective, and we really want to make sure all sections of the code are working well together, so the code can actually be as streamlined and as nimble as possible. So that would be the only thing that we would hesitate from jumping in and adopting something in advance. But if there's things that jump out, we can certainly expedite those. And we as the consultant just want to make sure we're keeping our eye on making sure we don't make decisions ahead that might affect something that we do later, and so that the whole system's working well together.
Totally understand. I just didn't want to wait until January.
Yeah, we're aware of that there are some concerns in the community that we may want to focus on and look at and see if we can get a jump on those. So we're prepared to do that if they make sense.
Great.
And that was exactly my point too, you know, I don't wanna wait around for a year, and when there's some obvious things out there that we might be able to vote on and change, because, you know, we don't wanna wait another year while businesses are continuing to move in the area. I mean, I think we need to be
Or
proactive.
continuing to avoid us.
Well, yeah, to the area around us.
Exactly.
So, yeah, so if there are definitely some things, and staff's probably already aware of certain issues that maybe we can, you know, expedite that process a little bit. We can always come back later and incorporate it in the grand scheme of it.
Cheryl, you've been involved in these kind of processes in other cities, correct? Can you speak to this a little bit?
Yes. Clearly, we do want to make sure that it's integrated, but one of the things that we're very sensitive to here is those things that might make us more economic, that might serve as a catalyst for economic development. For example, we know we have some issues without having a streamlined permitting process. We know we need to really address that. So that's going to be one of the things that we're going to be looking at is what are those things that are sensitive to economic development, and if we can try to move those forward without compromising the process, as Chris indicated, we will be trying to do that. As well as we go through the issues identification, there are some components that we've talked about that we need to look at with issues in various parts of the city, downtown, interstate, that we might want to look at how we might move some of those things as well. So we'll be working closely with them to look at that.
Other questions, comments?
Cheryl, I've got really one, and it's a follow-up to some of the discussions we had earlier, and we've heard a lot about the dependency on consultants for work and things. Can you give a perspective from a staffing perspective, what it would take internally to put a project like this? If it's what type of employee we don't have now, what would we need to be able to manage this process internally versus bringing in someone like Chris and his team to do it as a consultant-based project?
Sure. There's kind of two aspects of planning. There's that long-range comprehensive planning, and then the current planning, which is that day-to-day zoning component. In a lot of jurisdictions where you have staff doing more of the code right, they have a position which is a zoning administrator, and that zoning administrator is working specifically on code changes. They're working with the land development code a lot closer. We don't have the strength in the current planning where we've actually, just having someone who's actually taken a land development code rewrite and project managed it from beginning to end, and then having that zoning land development code perspective.
Would it then, so we complete the process as expected now?
Right.
With that in place, would that provide us the opportunity then to look at hiring someone that has a bit of expertise in that? I mean, not having to start the process from scratch, but managing codes on an ongoing basis. Does this provide us that opportunity?
Once you have your code in place, one of the things that we would look to do is, we'll have staff that works with the consultant
Right.
as they're developing. So they're going to be learning and they're going to be watching that. But then also, as you get more and more development, looking at your planning staff to kind of separate long-range comprehensive planning from some of that more current planning, so they have the day-to-day expertise, interpreting the zoning code, looking at the issues, working with it. And we do a little bit of a mix of that now. And we haven't been staffed specifically in those areas with strong zoning administration.
Thank you.
Is there a possibility of just piggybacking on these questions? Is there a possibility we can look at within our human resources planning for 2016, maybe bringing a position like that on board in 2016, so that when we do the handoff of the new codes from the consultants over to our internal staff, that we have someone there and ready to go to actually, pick up the baton and start running.
Yes, and what you typically do when you have a zoning administrator is when you're making code interpretations, you're tracking them so that you're discovering as you're working through the code what the problems are, and then you're bringing those changes, so you're continuously updating your code to make sure that you're not having to not look at your code over a period of 10, 15 years, and then all of a sudden you're trying to rewrite the entire thing. Much like pavement management or IT, it's an opportunity to do, it's maintenance of your code as well.
So with this $80,000 investment, we're gonna get our codes up to date, and if we have ongoing with an additional person or different background of a person, we shouldn't have to have this expense every, yeah.
You
it
can
should
do
be-
sections of
Okay.
your code or
We
maintain.
can do it ongoing.
You wanna do ongoing, and what I have found is that, when you do your comprehensive plan, and we really should be updating and maintaining our comprehensive plan, so when you're maintaining it and you're tracking your code amendments with that, it's much easier.
The project scope isn't so wide.
Right, exactly, the project scope isn't as wide.
And I would add that, I mean, I think it'll be an excellent code when it's done, but the ones I've been involved with in the previous communities, as Cheryl mentioned, it's, I mean, right off the bat, it's like, oh, well, I should have caught that. Or you get more input from the public, oh, well, we should have done that. So we will be bringing a number of changes, in the process.
That whole theory versus practice thing,
Right.
you know?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, and I'd like to mention, I mean, this is something, we were running the community development department on a shoestring there for quite a few years. 10 years ago, they had 11 people in the department, and you know, by 2010, we were down to 3. And no training or conferences or things like that. Economic downturn, you take, you know, necessary steps to protect the treasury, but it's not just, you know, bringing in new people or just training. I mean, it's a combination of both. I think that's what I'm hearing from the people on the dais.
It's a holistic approach. I mean,
Yes.
you need to have the inclusive training. We also have to have people who have a body of expertise previously, you know, previous to here, so that they can bring that knowledge with them and help to augment our knowledge base further. I mean, like Greg, for example. I mean, but the thing is, if you look at it, most of the departments, they work the same way when it comes to like things like regular maintenance and having a plan for, you know, upkeep and things that we've just been deferring. Now we're stuck in the unenviable position of having to do them all at the same time, you know, which is expensive. But once we get past this and actually have that plan in place, it should lower overall cost of government.
That's the plan, anyway.
That's the plan.
That's the plan. Anyone else have any questions or comments? If not, I'd entertain a motion on new business item number 2.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Harrison, second Shoes, that we authorize the city administrator to execute a consulting services contract with Gould Evans Associates for the amount of $77,800 to complete a land development code rewrite, and authorize the city administrator to approve modifications to the scope of services up to the budget amount of $80,000. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. New business item number 3. Consider amending the animal regulations ordinance. And this will be ordinance number 2478. Captain Belcher, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. At the December 15th, 2014 council meeting, council requested that the police department bring back an animal regulations ordinance to accommodate updates to the zoning regulations regarding accessory uses in animals. The ordinance revises 6.05.060D to allow for the keeping of certain animals not previously allowed. The proposed new language is found in section D below, which is any animal that would be normally associated with that of being a farm animal in areas not zoned for agricultural use except for animals as allowed by chapter 18.140.100D. In addition to permitting additional animal types, several housekeeping changes are incorporated to move from public safety to police department. The suggested motion is to adopt ordinance number 2478. Amending the animal regulations ordinance.
Very good. Real quick, we'll open the floor for public comments regarding new business item number 3. With no one coming forward, questions for Captain Belcher?
We do have our animal control officer, Jason Willis, here this evening.
Jason.
for any questions that might come his way.
Very good. Questions for Jason or Captain Bob?
I'm just gonna make we could talk about, chasing chickens, but, oh, you guys are ready for chasing chickens?
Well, I don't know that we're gonna catch them.
We can always have Rich back there bring a 22 and we'll just,
Not in the city limits. The councilman trying to get me in trouble right there.
Oh, a BB gun. But, this is needed, so,
With nobody else, apparently having any questions, I'd entertain a motion about it.
Second.
Motion Harrison, second Shute, that we adopt ordinance number 2478, amending the animal regulations ordinance. Freeman?
Yes.
Harrison?
Yes.
Roberts?
Yes.
Shute?
Yes.
Winters?
Yes.
Ordinance number 2478 passes. New business item number 4, consider a resolution of support for Mako Development Company for Gardner Estates rehabilitation. Brian Faust, welcome back.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
This, by the way, this would be resolution number 1919.
1919?
Yes.
The city did receive a request from Mako Development Company for a resolution supporting their application for low-income housing tax credits to rehabilitate units at the Gardner Estates. The state of Kansas does require developers seeking low-income housing tax credits through the Kansas Housing Resources Corporation to first seek a resolution of support from the city for their tax credit application. The property is located at 130 East Madison and was built in 1990. The property has not been maintained well and has delinquent taxes which have caused concern to staff. This funding will help address the physical needs of the property and bring the taxes current. In your packet this evening, we've included a resolution of support for low-income housing tax credits, a letter from Mako Development requesting resolution of support, and a zoning verification letter. The suggested motion this evening would be to adopt resolution 1919, supporting Mako's Development Company's application for low-income housing tax credits to rehabilitate the 24 one-bedroom units at Gardner Estates. And this evening, Mr. Dan Sanders is here from Mako.
Okay. Public comment regarding new business item number 4.
My name is Dan Sanders, corporate address 111 North Main Street, Clarkton, Missouri. I am with Mako Development Company, and I would be happy to answer any questions the council might have concerning this request.
Okay. Anyone else coming forward? No one else coming forward. Questions for Brian or Mr. Sanders from Mako?
I have questions. So the back taxes on this, it looks to be about $43,000. And then I noticed that rehabilitation and construction costs, in the amount of $1 million roughly, and I'm assuming that's what the loan would be for. I was doing some research on the USDA loan program. I guess I'm really confused on how getting this loan is going to bring taxes current. I mean, you're not suggesting that you're incorporating the $40,000 into the loan.
No. The Kansas Housing Resources Corporation approves tax credits. And as part of this, if they approve the tax credits, the current ownership will sell it to another limited partnership. As part of that sale, at that time, the taxes will be made current. The new partnership for the tax credits will bring in investors, the limited partners, who will receive the tax credit for putting equity into this development to do the rehab, to finance the reserves, to bring them up to date, where we won't have this problem in the future. The current mortgage will be re-underwritten along with an additional second mortgage, and rents will be also established at that time to maintain the property at where it needs to be to meet all its operating expenses, including making sure that its annual taxes are paid on time.
So, but this property today is subsidized, right? I mean, so you're really not, so I guess, this is where I'm struggling. So the loan today that the property has, the USDA loan, dictates what can be charged as rent, so the income is pretty much what it is, right? How is that gonna change? I mean,
They, as part of this, they actually will take it and restructure it. They'll look at it themselves. They will allow rents to be increased, because they're looking at the overall picture then, that everything's being brought in and brought up to date, being rehabbed. They actually will look then at the market rents, which we've already got a market study that says we'll be able to actually increase these rents by $100 a month. Those rents then will be able to produce enough operating income for this property to maintain what it needs to be.
Other questions?
Well, I'm just gonna be frank, this is a really tough sell. Not only are you nearly $50,000 in arrears on your tax payments, the property's not being maintained well, as it's been, maintained, as it's been said by the staff. And I'm not interested in a speculative move here. We're not going to assume the risk, the speculative risk of such a support. I'm against it. We've gone down this road before, where we have, financed, or agreed to support a financing of current, projects with a promise of potential return that never materializes. And until those taxes are brought up to date, I've got a real problem supporting this, it's just, I've got to think about a smart and efficient means of utilizing, and I understand this, I understand the tax credits coming from the state, but ultimately they're coming from the taxpayer. So what's happening here is that you're using taxpayer subsidies to finance a private project and also to help fix a arrears situation on taxes that should be paid to a municipal entity. To me, that's like a shell game. I'm sorry, I know that it's coming from two different places, but it's two pockets of the same, entity.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I won't interrupt if you have a reply to that.
I'm just gonna, my reply was, we were asked to table management last year. We're just now trying to get this project back on its feet. We were not management until 2013. And we were asked by the Kansas Housing Resource Corporation and the United States Department of Agriculture, because we do manage quite a few of these properties, they asked us to come in. It has been mismanaged. They asked us to address this. We've got, among the physical issues of this property, we got 2 units that, because of that drainage ditch that runs behind it, that the actual concrete has actually started to sag, and we've got 2 floors in there that are uninhabitable. And so part of this construction will be to bring them up and where they can actually be habitable, which actually again helps add to the income, to the things that are going to be needed for this project to not continue to deteriorate. We're trying to do, this is a plan we worked with both of those agencies, trying to come up with the best way to bring this up. It'll be in like new condition. Everything will be brought up current. And that's, this is what we're looking at as our best plan to be able to do this.
My questions, would the existing ownership still be involved with the project if this were to go through, or this actually is to finance the acquisition, so they'd no longer be a part of the program moving
New
forward?
ownership.
Who would own it or that's where you're looking to secure the investors to be part of the ownership group?
It will be a new limited partnership, of which Mako, our shell, one of our companies, which will actually become the general partner. And the general partner will actually bring in limited partners. It's a pretty liquid market out there. There's a lot of investors for tax credits. These are federal tax credits. As you know, a lot of the corporations, in 2009, we couldn't find investors for a lot of these types of deals. now, there's a lot of Wall Street investors that are looking for ways to buy tax credits. So-
But if this were to go through and allow you to move the way you'd like to, the current ownership that's allowed it to reach the point that it's at now would not be involved in
Right,
it.
and that
They'd
management's
be
already
no
been-
longer out of the picture.
Right, that management has already been replaced. We have taken it over, and we are making steps to try to get it back up to where it needs to be.
And the transaction itself couldn't take place until the taxes were paid in full, and that's not paid out of the tax credit money, that's paid out of revenues generated from this, or paid prior to the sale, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, I just wanna make sure I understood that correctly, that the people that led it to get here, this is actually a step to remove them from the process
Yes.
moving forward.
Yes, that's correct.
My question is if this is not supported, what's the next step or what happens? I mean,
It'll continue to struggle. We'll have to try to continue to do what we can to make it work. I mean, that's,
Is there a possibility you can get the taxes up, paid up, and then bring it back? Because I feel like I can't support it either with the back taxes.
the applications are due this Friday. If we don't, it'll be a year from now before we can ever even try this again. And again, for these types, this property originally financed with USDA, which back then was called Farmers Home Program. In the 70s and 80s, they built these type of apartments in rural communities throughout the United States, especially in the Midwest. And they don't have the funding anymore, they don't have the financial resources to rehab these properties. And so what we have been left with is the tax credit program, which was made as part of the 1986 Tax Reform Act, and it's a federal tax credit which is allocated to states every year to be able to put out toward either new construction or rehab of affordable homes. And right now, that's one of the few tools that we have to try to save these type of properties.
So are the taxes and mirrors going back 2009 through current? Is that what it is?
It's, 2012. 2012, 13, 14.
Oh, I thought-
It's the $43,000.
2009 and 2010 are updated as well. With interest due, I had a total that was closer to $80,000.
That's what I've got.
Yeah, 63,000 in out taxes and then 15,800 in interest payments due on those loans.
I have currently in May, we will be due probably over $79,000 in payment.
But your company took over in 2013, is that what you said?
That's correct.
I feel like.
And we had basically, one of the things, the liability issue when we took it over was the parking lot. I don't know if anybody had seen it when we took it over, but we had to immediately pave the parking lot, which took almost every dime that the property had, because we had severe liability issues with people getting hurt in the parking lot. I mean, that basically took all the money that was left in the property to bring that up to date.
Mr. Sanders, as the management group, and I know that a lot of the concern today has been the out-of-date taxes. What involvement do the unpaid taxes, or the management group have with the unpaid taxes portion of this? That's on the property owners themselves, correct? Or is that part of what you manage as an organization?
That is part of the owner, but as management, we will be enforced with budgeting and making sure that we are putting that money in a T&I escrow to be paying those on time. I mean, that's,
And that's just not taking place prior to your involvement?
right now, the rents aren't high enough, and like I say, we've got uninhabitable units. Just to be able to pay the maintenance, which is deteriorated at this point, you know, that's what we're struggling with at this point.
Can I ask, this is just an administrative question. So the property owner is Gardner Housing Partnership too, right? And then your Mako Management Company, yet the address on record is the same for both.
Right, management company gets sent.
So you're getting everything
And we did
for them?
we stepped in as general partner at the same time too, so we are the
Okay.
current general partner too.
Okay.
So yes, these wheel taxes will be brought current upon sale to the new owner.
What about the residents themselves? I mean, if these are limited, low-income housing residents, you know, $100, you're saying potentially you're going to increase their rents by $100 a month?
This also has federal rental assistance.
Okay.
The tenants themselves will not pay any more than 30% of their income as the current rate. So if their rent is $200 a month now, that's what it will be.
Oh, so that won't change for the rest
Their
of the
portion,
deal.
their portion of the rent.
Their portion won't go.
But what's reimbursed for that?
I still get a sense that there's subsidies chasing subsidies.
Well,
I mean, I understand where you're coming from on this, Steve, and, you know, we want to be able to facilitate, you know, these properties being rehabbed and have them up to speed and be rentable.
Right.
I get it. Mike, you made a point, that there was a market for these properties now, that Wall Street and other investors were actually, you know, going into the speculative market, you know, for these properties now. My question is, if that's the case, then why do you have to have low-income housing credits?
It's for the tax credit.
The tax credit.
That's what I want.
So the tax credits make it attractive for investors. So Wall Street is also looking for the subsidy.
Yeah,
too.
actually, they want out of this one right now, the current investor is
It's
it's
a
a group
losing
out of New York
proposition.
City, and they want their hands washed of it right now.
You know, Steve's absolutely, it is subsidy, and it is chasing subsidy, but the way I look at this is actually, if this were to go through, it, in my mind, would actually expedite the process of getting the taxes up to date, because they have to do that to move on to the next step if they were to be granted this. The other piece of it is, and I hate that it comes down to this, but it's unavoidable, what they're applying for, that money's going to be given away. We're not protecting that money from anything, we're just providing an opportunity for that money to get spent in Gardner. If they don't get it, it's going to go to someone, it's not going to be, they aren't going to get it and no one else is. So then you, hopefully open the door for an opportunity for senior housing to be brought up to date with a little bit better living situation that won't impact their bottom dollar because it is rent protected from the 30% of income. That will change, but it also provides more habitable space for possibly, I mean, what you would have to expect to be long-term benefit to the community as a whole, especially with the aging community and the homes that they have to move into when they reach those income restrictions. So, you know, when you look at this, these aren't perfect scenarios. Tax credits aren't, it's like a tip. You know, everybody wants to go back in time and tell the first guy that offered a tip not to do it because it'll change the world forever. This is that sort of scenario where we aren't saving anyone money by saying no, we're just saying they aren't going to get the money, someone else will. And it does, I think, expedite the process to get these taxes up to date. I think we'll see that money faster because they have to do that before they can do anything else. They won't be able to facilitate the transaction with unpaid taxes. Correct me if I'm wrong on any part of that, Laura. I mean, I know you're familiar with the taxes side of it. They can't do anything until it's paid up to date. That's part of any transaction on real estate side, correct?
It needs, yeah.
Although the only caveat I'll say is, remember that the county collects, and the county forecloses, and the county handles that whole process, so kinda out of, I mean, I can't promise you.
No, absolutely.
Because I don't have anything to do with it. I'm just saying there is a process.
Right.
There's a statutory process, and
And-
they'll get to it when they get to it, so.
It's a very good possibility without a program like this, that process gets stretched to that max because it has to be the county that puts them on the court steps, that, like we always hear about. It's
And
good.
they're behind.
They're gonna be on the court steps, so they're behind, the county's already taken. I don't know if they have taken any actions, but, you know, it's certainly not an insignificant amount in a short-term debt at this point. They're almost 6 years behind. This might be a way for it to come through and also just build a better property for aging residents at really minimal impact to Gardner as a whole, because they're going to pay for this tax credit. I mean, I'm going to pay in my taxes a tax credit because it's going to go somewhere.
You're gonna do it whether it's in Gardner,
Yes.
or whether it's in El
Whether-
Dorado Springs, or
And that's what it
another
comes
state.
down. This provides us an opportunity to try to focus some of those dollars here, because at the end of the day, it will benefit Gardner as a whole.
Like the competing public policy stuff.
Absolutely.
We talk about. And no, I cannot promise you I can do anything about this,
No.
because I cannot.
No.
But I can tell you there is a process.
You know, what I hope that Mr. Sanders would say is that the current ownership won't be involved in any way moving forward, because that's what's led it here in this plan.
Right. And it's current.
Expedite.
That's correct.
Yes.
I don't know if I can still vote for this, given the fact we don't have concrete written assurances that those taxes will be brought up to speed. I mean, that's just me.
Yeah, and I understand what you're saying, but the one thing that I remember is, this is not authorizing any money. This is authorizing support for them to apply for this. I mean, we're not support of this or not in support of it. It doesn't say you get or don't get money. It just basically says the council supports your ability to go after these tax credits. And these,
It's a competitive, scarce resource, and without this, we don't have any chance. With it, we've got a chance. That's what it allows.
Well, I think you said it well, that it's gonna go to someone. And if we can, you know, this would be something that would improve Gardner, improve the, you know, improve the community, and get taxes back into the community, I'm looking forward.
Other questions, comments?
Other than the fact that I wish we could have gone back and said that these kind of arrangements should never be done, because it'll change the world forever.
We all do.
I know, this to me encapsulates everything that's wrong with government and getting involved with these kind of speculative deals.
I want this to get back released, not at all.
Entertain a motion on new business item number 4.
I move we approve new business item number 4.
Second.
Motion, Freeman, second Winters, that we adopt a resolution 1919 supporting Mako Development Company's application for low-income housing tax credits to rehabilitate the 24 one-bedroom units at Gardner Estates. Freeman.
Yes.
Harrison.
yes,
Roberts.
No.
Shute.
No.
Winters.
Yes.
Resolution 1919 passes. New business item number 5, consider the 2015 County Assisted Road System CARS agreement for Moonlight Road and Lincoln Lane intersection project. And everywhere I look, Brian, there you are.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. On May 19, 2014, the City Council did approve Resolution 1907, approving the 2015 to 2019 CARS program prior to submitting to the county for approval. The county did approve Moonlight Road and Lincoln Lane signalization for 2015, and is now requesting that the city sign an agreement. CARS will provide up to $138,000 towards the project. Based on the preliminary estimate, the city is expected to provide $173,000 towards the design and construction of the project. Funding will come from the Special Highway Fund. Motion this evening, our suggested motion would be to authorize the mayor to sign the agreement with Johnson County for design and construction of the Moonlight Road and Lincoln Lane signalization project.
Public comment regarding new business item number 5. Anyone in attendance that would like to speak about 2015 CARS agreement for Moonlight Road and Lincoln Lane? No one coming forward? Questions for Brian regarding new business item number 5?
More of a statement, this is overdue. Get it done.
Mine wasn't really a question, and we might be too early in the process, but do we have any tentative timeline or anything yet, or?
Well, it'll be this year. The design, actually, background, when we did the Moonlight project a few years back, they actually did do a preliminary single design. And so that's, the initial work was already laid out. So it actually should go fairly quickly.
Brian, are we still convinced that it's better to put the light here than at Madison Moonlight? I mean, is there?
Yeah, actually we are.
Okay.
For just a little background, in the last, 2000, when Casey's went in, they did a traffic study. At that point in time, they identified that signals did not meet the warrants at that intersection. We quite honestly, we do envision at some point in time there needing to be a signal there. There's a couple additional lots there right behind Casey's that will develop. That increased traffic flow will have an impact on that intersection. We did do a warrant study for Lincoln Lane and Moonlight, and we now do meet warrants 2009 or 2010 that haven't funded. We had 15 at Lincoln Lane, and we had 5 at Madison.
Yeah, that's been a problem intersection for quite a while, especially since the, little through street now that goes from Lincoln down to Main. A lot of people use that as a way to get around that intersection at Woodline Main, so.
Lori, how much was built into the 2015 budget for this project? $193,400.
Yeah, we had in 2014, 17,000 for design, and in 2015, we had 293,400.
So it looks like we're coming in under budget on the project?
Thanks to cars.
Thanks to cars?
Well, cars pays 50% of construction.
Yeah. Great. Other questions? Comments? I'd entertain a motion on new business item number 5.
So moved.
Second. Motion, Shute, second, Freeman, that we authorize the mayor to sign the agreement with Johnson County for design and construction of the Moonlight Road and Lincoln Lane signalization project. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Put up some lights. New business item number 6, consider adopting an ordinance revising chapter 9, 50, 30, amendments and additions to the Uniform Public Offense Code. Laura, welcome back.
Thank you. Every year, we do that whole, after the legislature finishes, then we come back and say, okay, now we have to adopt all the changes they made. And then we add those Gardner-specific, we do this or we don't do that. Well, apparently the Gardner-specific piece that talks about unlawful use of the weapon exceeded the permissible scope of the new verbiage passed by the legislature. So since there was a section that actually addressed that in 10.1, we don't need our unlawful use of the weapons, and it's wrong anyway. So we need to take it out.
Any public comment regarding new business item number 6?
I think we know right.
With no one coming forward, questions for Laura regarding new business item number 6?
Which I will promptly defer to your city attorney. So,
Right.
question for Ryan.
And if not, you know, the ordinance is number 2479.
I move we approve new business item number 6.
Second.
Motion, Freeman, second, Shute. We adopt ordinance number 2479, amending the code of the city of Gardner, chapter 9, 5, 30, amendments and additions to the Uniform Public Offense Code. Freeman?
Yes.
Harrison?
Yes.
Roberts?
Yes.
Shute?
Yes.
Winters?
Yes.
Ordinance number 2479 passes. New business item number 7, consider appointments to the Utility Advisory Commission. And the recommendation here is that the council authorize the mayor to make appointments to the Utility Advisory Commission. We can consider each applicant separately. Everybody's had a chance to look at the process for appointing and/or reappointing these members. We had 3 members whose terms were expiring, and they either needed to be reappointed or new appointments made. We had applicants from all 3 of the current seated members. One of them withdrew at the last moment, and that left us with Mark Baldwin and Dwayne Waldman, both interested in continuing their service, and local resident Ryan Learned being interviewed. And recommendation from the interview panel, which consisted of myself, City Administrator Harrison Lee, and council president, recommend that we appoint each of these three members. So, in the past, we've always appointed them separately so that we could vote on each person as we go. That's the end of the presentation. If there's anyone in the audience that would like to make public comment regarding new business item number 7, now would be your opportunity. I would take a, I would be interested in entertaining a motion about authorizing the mayor to reappoint Mark Baldwin on the Utility Advisory Commission.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Shute, second Freeman, that we reappoint Mark Baldwin to the Utility Advisory Commission. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Second motion would be to authorize the mayor to reappoint Dwayne Waldman to the Utility Advisory Commission with his term expiring in January 2019.
Second.
Motion Harrison, second Winters, that we reappoint Dwayne Waldman. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Number 3 would be authorizing the mayor to appoint Ryan Learned to the Utility Advisory Commission with his term expiring in January 2019.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Harrison, second Shute, that we appoint Ryan Learned to the Utility Advisory Commission. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
That would be the end of new business item number 7. I had meant to bring this up at the beginning of the council meeting, and failed to do so. We are actually requiring an executive session. Yet the council president's got the motion for the adjournment, and then I think we're looking at 15 or 20 minutes, 15 minutes.
I move to recess into executive session to discuss personnel matters of non-elected personnel pursuant to KSA 75-4319B1, beginning at 8:15 p.m., returning to regular session at 8:30 p.m.
Second.
Motion Harrison, second Freeman, that we adjourn into executive session for 15 minutes. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? We are adjourned for 15 minutes. Entertain a motion to resume the city council meeting.
So moved.
Motion Shute, second Harrison, that we resume the city council meeting. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? We are in session.
I move to recess into executive session to discuss personnel matters of non-elected personnel pursuant to KSA 75-4319B1, beginning at 8:30 p.m., returning to regular session at 8:40 p.m.
Second.
Motion Harrison, second Shute, that we adjourn into executive session to last no longer until 8:40 p.m. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? We are adjourned. entertain a motion to resume a regular session.
So moved.
Motion, Shute, second, Harrison, that we resume regular session. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? We are back in session. Council updates. Does staff have anything for council? Mary? Yeah?
Just follow up to your inquiry on the daddy-daughter ball around the corner.
Cool.
It is full, sold out in about a month and a half.
Wow.
Should be great activity.
Very good. I bet that one pays for itself.
Yes,
Brian, anything else? Cheryl?
Yes, we were very fortunate to have a very good group session at the kickoff meeting for Garden Review. It's going to span over the next 6 weeks. We had an opportunity to talk about finance and administration at the first session, and up next will be business and economic development and parks and rec.
Fantastic.
How many,
We have 12 to include a student from the
Laura?
No, sir.
Anything? Jeannie? Okay. Very good. Council have anything for staff?
I just had a quick question about citizen engagement for both the budget and the CIP. I know that there was a budget session, a workshop, and where we got this great feedback. I know that I've been approached with inquiries about the CIP and where the citizen involvement was going to be on, from the standpoint of actually getting some exposure to those components, you know, with some time to be able to comment on them. And so I was just seeing if there was a session scheduled for that, because I think that there was some consensus from the dais that we wanted to have that before we had our final vote.
The CIP Citizen Forum is scheduled for the 23rd.
Of February?
Yes, of February.
Okay. And all the basic components of the CIP, the proposed CIP, will be there for review?
Right, the revised CIP with the comments was posted on the city's website, I think back November 26th or around that time frame. And then we will have staff there to talk about those projects at the 23rd meeting.
Okay.
The majority of which are public works, so yes, it'll be kind of the grand, the extravagant, yes.
Okay.
So we will be talking about those projects, yes.
Utility Advisory Commission meets Thursday, and they're going to be the first people to get information about the utility plants and then the delivery systems and needs.
Yes, that's correct. On Thursday, the Utility Advisory Committee, we committed to bringing you all assessments for water, wastewater, and electric. Those assessments will be coming to you at the next council meeting. The Utility Advisory Council Commission will have an opportunity to review and discuss those and hear from those consultants on Thursday.
Can I ask just a general question
Sure.
about that? So, we received the payment stuff, we're gonna get the electric, we're gonna get the water, wastewater. My thought is, well, I guess I'm asking in general, I don't think those should be part of the CIP. I mean, to me, that's maintenance, right? It's your fixing, now there may be some things, some components that are, I don't know, you're building a new, I don't know, you know, new stuff. I guess I kind of think of CIP as new stuff or large enhancement projects. But to me, that stuff is just, I mean, it's stuff we have to do, and it should be budgeted as part of an ongoing expense, not part of a CIP.
I would agree. That's kind of where the street program.
Correct.
I know that there was discussion of putting streets into capital. That doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense. And from this perspective, when you get to a point where you're doing ongoing every year maintenance, the $600,000, that $650,000 we were talking about, that should be part of your operational budget. That should be baked in on a yearly basis. Now, the initial rebuilds, we've got a lot of rebuilds. It's going to cost a lot of money. I can see that maybe being a part of a CIP for the
That's
short term,
portions
but the maintenance, the pavement management, that should not be in a CIP in my opinion. That should be part of regular budgeted outlays.
I don't think that was going to be in the CIP.
You're right. Some of those things are maintenance. They really should be in the maintenance ongoing budget, except for the major things that are truly capital projects. But some of them really should be part of your ongoing maintenance.
Capital projects, the system upgrades, increasing capacity.
Yep.
Things like that, those are the ones that are supposed to.
Okay.
But yeah, we're gonna have a couple more meetings about that in pretty short order, so.
But we're not waiting on the CIP, I guess that was my question, we're not waiting to have a CIP discussion so that we can include this stuff, or basically, it's just timing.
There will be some components from the assessment that will be capital projects, but some of it should go into maintenance.
Absolutely.
So we'll separate out those items that should be maintenance, and then those items that should be capital projects, you'll get those recommendations for the CIP.
Like I would almost think, the IT build that we're doing,
Yes.
that's almost a capital expense to me. Now, going forward, that makes sense to me, like it's not, we're handling it in operational, but if we would have had some planning in advance, I would have put them in the capital because of the significant purchase and outlay and brand new equipment, whereas, but.
I wanted to have a quick follow, and Adam's not here any longer tonight, but he brought up a great point about the engagement aspect and the information aspect when we have these projects that have several steps of public involvement. And I'm not certain if currently we could do that or through the site redesign, but the benefit of having just project hosted pages that say, this is the project we're taking on, this is the project for, the code rewrite. And this is the proposed timeline, now that we actually can construct the timeline because we voted to move forward. It had been impossible to do so before we elected to move forward with it, but tonight we have. Now we can draft that timeline and actually keep them up to date of where we are in the process. So at any point, any citizen could actually log into the website, not log in, but visit. Here's the project page for that, and here's where we are in the process, and the next expected event, and here's some things you might have now to be available for you to review. So I think that's something we need to look to do, and Bill, I mean, if we can do it in short order, fantastic. If not, that needs to be part of the site redesign and posting those project pages.
I think we can. Thank you all for the communications manager, because help's on the way, and I do think that's going to free up some time where we will have an opportunity to be able to have more information on the city's website. So yes, we can do some project hosted sections for the public.
And just post a page, not even just postings of what's coming up, but a site that hosts all of that in one
All the
spot for a
information.
specific project. So
Okay.
this is everything that goes into the process. Here's the expected timeline, here's where we are at. Here's what's already available for you to review if you'd like to do so.
There is a page on the city website right now that talks about the 2016 budget and includes the information about the things that we've done so far.
So if I think if we take those even one step further with updates and with the communications manager, I think that'd be beneficial. That's all I had, thanks.
The new communications manager is gonna be busy.
Yeah. Tori, you know,
Waste of money.
anyone else? But entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion, shoot, second, Harris. We adjourn. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.
Clint, you look like Wall Street tonight with your scarf on. Who's the type of
Yeah.